Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting down and dirty, going off-road. We're going to explore the 2025 KTM Freeride E-XC.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we got this detailed review here, hot off the press, fresh from April 1st, 2025.
Okay.
And we are taking it seriously, no fooling around here.
Right.
This promises to give us, the complete picture of this electric dirt bike.
Cool.
And our mission, really, specifically for you, if you're trying to get smart on this quickly, is to really understand what this machine is all about and whether it lives up to the idea of being, quote unquote, the ultimate off-road experience. No pressure or anything.
Yeah, right. The ultimate.
The ultimate, yeah.
So I think, what really jumps out is this whole concept of, a high-performance dirt bike, but it's powered by electricity.
Yeah.
So can you get all the thrills of off-road riding, but without that, traditional engine noise and the exhaust? And I think that's what this review we're looking at really digs into, right? Does the Freeride E-XC actually deliver on that promise, especially for someone like you who wants a deep understanding without getting lost in, all the little nitty-gritty details?
Right.
So the core question I think we're going to tackle here is this electric option actually the kind of high-performance alternative, that maybe you've been thinking about?
All right. Well, let's jump right in. Let's dive into the engine, or should we say the motor.
Yeah.
It's an 18-kilowatt, which I believe translates to about 24 horsepower, and it's a permanent magnet synchronous electric motor.
Fancy.
Yeah, fancy, right. But the thing that keeps coming up is this idea of instant torque.
Right.
And unlike a gas bike, that needs to build up revs, this just delivers the power right away, right from 0 RPM.
Yeah.
So what does that actually feel like when you're out there on the trails?
Well, the instant torque, it's not just some, fancy spec on a sheet of paper. It totally changes how you ride off-road. Imagine, you're facing a tough climb, a tricky climb.
Right.
With a regular engine, you're always messing with the gears, trying to stay in that sweet spot of power.
Yeah.
But the electric motor just cuts all that out.
Yeah.
The power is there the second you need it, and that gives you this crazy amount of control. It's like there's this direct connection between your wrist and the rear wheel.
Wow.
And that's super important for getting over obstacles and just keeping your momentum going on these steep hills where shifting in the middle of a climb, that can be a disaster, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It can also make learning those technical skills a little bit easier because the response is so direct, so immediate.
Yeah, it makes sense. The power is just there.
It's there, yeah.
So let's talk about the energy source now, the battery.
Right.
It's a 3.9 kilowatt lithium-ion battery, and the review says you can get about 1.5 to 2 hours of riding time, which, depends on, how hard you're pushing it and which of the three modes you're in, eco, standard, or advanced.
Right.
Charging back up takes about 1.3 hours to get to 80%.
Okay.
And then about 2 hours for a full charge using KTM's fast charger.
Right.
So how does that compare to the real world rhythm of off-road riding? How does that fit in compared to, just filling up a gas tank?
Well, if we think about how we fill up now, obviously those charging times, they're definitely longer than that quick, pit stop at the gas station.
Right.
But the trade-off, and this is a big one, and the article really points this out, is that, you have almost no maintenance, right?
Yeah.
And no fuel costs at all.
Yeah.
So for a typical off-road ride, which, maybe lasts a couple hours, that 1.5 to 2 hour range, that's probably fine for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And just that idea of plugging it in after a ride like you would your phone and having it ready in a couple hours, in the time it takes to have a relaxed lunch.
Right, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty convenient.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of refueling.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the dirt bike world, weight is a big deal.
Yeah.
This Freeride E-XC comes in at 110 kilograms, or 242 pounds,
Okay.
which, they say, is lighter than most of its electric competitors.
Right.
And for maneuvering off-road, that seems like a huge advantage.
Yeah, totally.
It's built with a steel aluminum composite frame.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they're really going for that strength without, too much weight.
Right.
And then it's got, the WP X-Pillar suspension. They're calling them, serious bits for soaking up all the bumps and jumps.
Right.
And Formula hydraulic disc brakes for those, times when you need to stop quickly. Top speed is around 70 kilometers, about 43 mile per hour.
Okay.
Which, for the technical trails that this thing seems designed for, that feels about right, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The focus here is not, like, how fast can you go?
Right.
It's much more about agility, control, being able to really navigate all those tough, challenging off-road environments, right?
Right.
So you've got that lighter weight plus a really good suspension system, reliable brakes. It
Mhm.
sounds like a bike that's really built to make you feel confident on technical terrain.
Yeah.
And that steel aluminum frame, that's a smart choice, right?
Yeah.
It gives you the stiffness where you need it for good handling,
Yeah.
but keeps the overall weight down, which means, better responsiveness, and you're not going to get tired as quickly.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dig into some of these key features that the review really hits on.
Yeah.
First up, we got to talk about that instant torque again.
Right.
They highlight how important that is, for getting quick acceleration, maintaining control, especially when you're on those steep climbs in the technical sections where you just need that power immediately.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want to be messing with shifting gears.
Right.
Right.
What's really cool about that instant torque is how it can, like, totally change how you approach riding.
Right.
You're not constantly thinking about, okay, I got to change gears or I got to manage my RPMs to stay in the power.
Right.
You can just focus on, like, picking your line, staying balanced. It kind
Yeah.
of simplifies things, which can actually make off-roading, technical off-roading, more approachable, if you're newer to it.
Right.
But it still gives those experienced riders, a big advantage when they need that really precise throttle control.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so then we've got the battery and charging system.
Right.
And I think it's worth, saying those numbers again.
Yeah, yeah.
3.9 kilowatt capacity, which gives you 1.5 to 2 hours of ride time, and those pretty quick charging times, relatively speaking.
Right.
It seems like KTM has really put some effort into minimizing that downtime between rides.
Yeah, and those 3 different riding modes, the Eco, Standard, and Advanced, those are a really smart way to give you that control, between battery life and performance, right?
Yeah.
If you're on a longer, more relaxed trail ride, you can use Eco mode and, save some energy and make your battery last longer.
Yeah.
But if you, like, hit a tough obstacle or you just want to go faster, you can switch to Advanced and boom, you've got all that power available.
Right.
That's a huge plus, to be able to adapt to all the different riding conditions.
All right, so the lightweight frame is another big thing the review talks about.
Yeah.
It's not just about, being easier to pick up if you drop it.
Right.
The article really focuses on how that steel aluminum composite construction really contributes to the bike's nimbleness
Right.
and overall control, especially when you're on those tight, twisty, single-track trails.
Mm-hmm.
Less weight just means it's easier to flip the bike around and, quickly react to all the changes in the terrain.
Exactly. Less weight means less inertia. So think about, like, trying to quickly change direction on a heavy bike versus a lighter one.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. That reduced inertia makes the bike, respond to you so much better as a rider.
Right.
You can lean into turns easier. You can adjust your line quicker. Like, if you run into something unexpected and it just feels less bulky overall, which is super important when you're riding off-road.
Right. Yeah, totally.
You know?
Okay, and then we've got, let's not forget about the WP XPLR
Oh,
suspension.
yeah.
They talk about the 43mm front forks, and then the PDS rear shock.
Right.
This doesn't sound like just your basic, entry-level stuff.
Right.
This is designed to be really effective damping, whether you're hitting small bumps or absorbing, like, those big impacts.
Yeah.
And, off-road, a comfortable and controlled ride.
Yeah.
That can be the difference between, like, a great day and, a pretty brutal experience for your body.
Yeah, the quality of the suspension has a huge impact on how comfortable you are and just how confident you feel. A good system like the WP XBLR, with that 43mm front fork and the progressive damping system, PDS rear shock, it helps keep those wheels on the ground.
Yeah.
That not only gives you better traction and control on all sorts of terrain, it also really cuts down on rider fatigue so you can ride longer and just enjoy it more.
Yeah, that's key.
Right.
So the Formula hydraulic disc brakes, they get a mention too.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for their stopping power, which is obviously important,
Of course.
but also because of that regenerative braking feature.
Right.
So every time you slow down, you're actually putting a little bit of energy back into the battery.
Yeah.
Which seems like a nice little bonus to get a little more ride time.
Yeah, regenerative braking is a really clever thing, especially for an electric off-road bike.
Yeah.
Where you're doing a lot of, like, speeding up, slowing down,
Right.
It's not going to, like, double your range or anything, but
Right.
every little bit helps, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it could even make your brake pads and rotors last longer.
Oh, okay.
you know?
So last but not least, we got to talk about the eco-friendly and low-maintenance stuff.
Right.
No more oil changes, no more trips to the gas station,
Yeah,
and, absolutely zero emissions while you're riding.
that's amazing.
Plus, the electric motor has way fewer moving parts than a regular engine,
Mm-hmm.
so you're probably looking at a much simpler ownership experience in the long run.
Right.
Less to worry about, which is a big appeal for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I mean, the convenience of not having to deal with like all those fluids,
Yeah.
regular engine maintenance, like, oil changes and filter changes and all that stuff with getting gas and storing it. It's a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah.
And for riders who are thinking about, the environment and their impact,
Yeah.
that zero emission thing is a huge plus. It also means you might be able to ride in places where gas bikes aren't allowed because of the noise.
Right. Okay, so how does this Freeride E-XC stack up against the other electric dirt bikes out there?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, the review mentions a few competitors: the Suron Light BX, the Stark VARG, and the Zero FX.
Okay.
So let's start with the Suron.
Right.
It's got a smaller motor, 6 kilowatters, but it says it can go for up to 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, longer ride time, potentially.
Yeah.
But the article says the KTM has more peak power and a better suspension setup.
Okay.
So it's suggesting that the KTM is, more powerful and handles better in tougher conditions.
Right, so it's a different focus.
Yeah.
The Suron seems like it's more for those longer rides where, maybe you're not going as fast and battery life is the most important thing.
Yeah.
But the Freeride E-XC, that's built for performance.
Right.
It's for when you really want to push it and you need that extra power and a better suspension to handle the rough stuff.
Yeah, it's like you're trading off range for, better performance and handling.
Exactly.
Okay, then there's the Stark VARG,
Okay.
which, they describe as this crazy high-performance electric motocross bike with 80 horsepower.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a huge difference from the KTM.
That's a lot of power.
But they also say it's heavier.
Okay.
And it's designed for motocross tracks,
Yeah.
with big jumps and high speeds.
Yeah.
Not really the technical trails and enduro riding that the Freeride E-XC seems to be more for.
Yeah, so different bikes for different kinds of riding.
Right. Yeah.
The Stark VARG is for that rider who just wants raw power
Yeah.
and loves those motocross tracks.
Right.
But the Freeride E-XC, it's lighter and more agile.
Right.
It's made for that rider who wants to explore all sorts of terrain.
Yeah.
Where, being able to move around and control the bike is more important than just going fast in a straight line.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it. And finally, they mentioned the Zero FX.
All right.
It's a dual sport electric motorcycle.
Okay.
So you can ride it both on and off road.
Right.
It's got a more powerful motor than the KTM, 34 kilowatt.
Yeah.
But the review says that while the Zero FX might be better for, street riding because it's got more top-end power,
Mm-hmm.
the Freeride E-XC is the winner when it comes to, pure off-road performance.
Right.
Especially because of its suspension and handling on really rough terrain.
Yeah, because the Zero FX has to do both street and dirt.
Yeah.
It has to, make compromises.
Right.
But the Freeride E-XC, it's all about off-road.
Yeah.
So it can really focus on that, the suspension, the lightweight frame, everything.
Right.
So if you're mostly riding trails, the Freeride E-XC is probably the better choice.
Okay, so it sounds like, from this comparison, that the Freeride E-XC is really good at trail riding.
Yeah.
Tackling those tough climbs and just being really agile.
Mm-hmm.
It might not have the longest battery life or the most horsepower,
Right.
but it seems like it's a really good all-around package for off-road riders.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It really comes down to what you want out of your bike. The Freeride E-XC, it's for people who want a high-quality, fun off-road experience with all the good stuff that electric power brings.
Right. Okay. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the design and comfort.
Okay.
The review keeps mentioning this, lightweight and slim design, all thanks to that steel aluminum frame.
Yeah.
And they really emphasize how that helps with maneuverability.
Yeah.
Especially in those tight trails.
Right. That slim design is so important for off-road.
Yeah.
Lets you move your body around freely, which is super important for balance and control.
Yeah.
Especially when you've got, uneven surfaces, ruts, and all that.
Right.
And when you combine that with the lightweight frame,
Yeah.
the bike just feels like it's a part of you, you know?
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier to react to what the trail throws at you.
Okay, so the premium suspension gets mentioned again here.
Mm-hmm.
But this time they're talking about how it helps with rider comfort.
Right?
That WPXPLR fork and shock, They're not just about performance.
Right.
They're also there to smooth out the bumps and make the ride more comfortable even when things get really rough.
Exactly.
And they also point out the benefit of having that high ground clearance,
Oh, yeah.
so you don't hit obstacles on the trail.
Ground clearance is a must-have for any serious off-road bike. You don't want to be constantly smacking into rocks or logs, right?
No, no, no.
And a good suspension system, like the WP-XPLR, it not only makes things more comfortable by absorbing all those impacts,
Yeah.
it also helps you maintain traction by keeping those wheels on the ground, which is super important for staying in control.
So ergonomics, that's a big part of how much you enjoy a long ride.
Oh, absolutely.
And they describe the Freeride E-XC as having a narrow but comfortable seat,
Okay.
an upright riding position, and a wide handlebar.
Hmm.
So it sounds like they're going for both control and comfort, even on those long rides.
Yeah, that upright riding position, it gives you a better view of the trail. And it puts less strain on your back and wrists, which is key if you're going to be riding for a while.
Right.
That wider handlebar gives you more leverage for steering,
Yeah.
especially at lower speeds. And when you're in those tricky sections where you need precise control
Yeah.
and the narrow seat, that just lets you move around more,
Right.
which is super important for shifting your weight on an off-road bike.
So last thing on the design side,
Yeah.
the review mentions all the durable components they used.
Right.
Things like, high-strength plastics, a reinforced frame, heavy-duty foot pegs. They even have a skid plate and handguards.
Nice.
And, the battery and motor are designed to be protected.
That's good.
It sounds like this bike is built to take a beating,
Yeah.
which is what you need for serious off-roading.
Yeah, durability is so important when you're talking about off-road.
Right.
You're going to hit stuff, you're going to scrape stuff, you're going to fall over. So using strong materials and having those extra protections like the skid plate and handguards, it shows that KTM really thought about how this bike would be used in the real world.
Right. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of all the good stuff, all the advantages that the review talks about.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we've got that instant torque and smooth acceleration for those tough climbs, the silent and eco-friendly performance,
Right.
lower maintenance, lightweight and agile handling, adjustable riding modes so you can customize it,
Yeah.
and regenerative braking to get a little extra range.
That's a pretty impressive list.
It is, right.
It really shows what's so great about electric off-road bikes
Yeah.
and what the Freeride E-XC brings to the table.
Yeah, it's a lot of positive.
You get performance, you're good for the environment, and it's potentially easier to own.
Right, but, like with anything, there are some drawbacks.
Of course, yeah.
The review mentions the limited riding range, 1.5 to 2 hours, which could be a problem if you're planning really long rides. Then there's the longer charging time compared to just filling up a gas tank,
Right.
which could be annoying if you don't have a fast charger or extra batteries.
Yeah.
And then there's the higher price tag.
Right.
Although they do mention that there might be some government incentives to help with that.
Okay.
It's also heavier than some of those super light electric bikes out there. And the top speed is lower than motocross bikes, so it's more for trails and enduro.
Right.
And then, the availability of charging stations, especially more remote areas, is still something to think about.
Yeah, these are all important things to consider if you're thinking about going electric.
Right.
The technology is getting better all the time.
Yeah.
But there are still trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
That range anxiety and the charging situation, especially if you're riding in the middle of nowhere,
Right.
that's something we're all dealing with, not just with dirt bikes, but with all electric vehicles.
Right.
So you got to weigh the pros and cons.
Okay, so the review has this little FAQ section at the end,
Oh, okay.
just to wrap things up.
Yeah.
And it basically confirms everything we've talked about. Battery life, 1.5 to 2 hours. Replaceable battery, top speed 70 to 80 kilometers, charging time 1.3 hours to 80%, 2 hours for a full charge.
Right.
It's supposed to be good for beginners because of that smooth power delivery.
Yeah.
Low maintenance, better for trails and enduro than motocross, very durable, and of course eco-friendly.
Okay.
So it's a good summary of all the key points.
Yeah. FAQs are great for that.
Right.
Answering those common questions that people have.
Right.
It really helps you understand what the bike is all about.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the 2025 KTM Freeride E-XC,
Yeah.
what are your overall thoughts?
Well, it sounds like a really well-made and well-designed electric dirt bike.
Yeah.
That's really focused on giving you an exciting and agile off-road experience.
Yeah.
And it takes advantage of all the good things about electric power,
Right.
Zero emissions, quieter operation.
Yeah.
That instant torque and the high-quality suspension, Those are the standouts for me.
Yeah, these seem to be the big selling points.
Definitely.
So, based on this review, it seems like the Freeride E-XC is a really capable electric off-road bike.
Yeah, it's clearly great for those technical trails where you need that instant power and lightweight handling.
Right.
It might not be the best for like super long rides or motocross tracks,
Yeah.
but it seems like a great option for riders who want a high-quality, eco-friendly, and fun off-road experience.
Yeah, and that brings us back to you, the listener.
Right.
So think about everything we've covered.
Yeah.
The instant power, but the limited range.
Mm.
The quiet operation, but maybe longer charging times.
Yeah.
Less maintenance, but a higher price tag.
Right.
How do all these things fit with your own riding needs and what you're looking for in a bike?
Yeah, that's the key question.
Right.
Would you trade a little range for the chance to ride trails quietly and without polluting?
Yeah.
Is less maintenance and no more gas worth spending a bit more upfront?
Right. It's all about figuring out what's most important to you.
And I think this whole discussion about the Freeride E-XC, it makes us think about like the future of off-road riding.
Yeah, totally.
It's not just about the specs,
Right.
What would it be like to ride in nature without all that engine noise?
Yeah. Imagine that.
How would that change how you connect with the environment?
It'd be a whole different experience.
Right. It's not just about going faster or further. It's about like a different way of experiencing the outdoors.
Yeah, a richer experience.
Yeah, maybe even a more sustainable way of enjoying off-roading.
Yeah,
So that's something to think about.
definitely.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Great talking with you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.